God. He was a very well-known, influential, famous person who hobnobbed with even the king when the king was his enemy. But when he came to die, 2 days before he died, he was with Charles Fleetwood, and this is what he said to assess his own life. I'm leaving the ship of the church in a storm, but while the great pilot is in it, the loss of a poor under-rower will be inconsiderable. I don't think that was mock humility. It was said in private to a friend, a poor under-rower will scarcely be missed. In his book on mortification, he wrote, to keep our souls in a constant state of mourning and self-abasement is the most necessary part of our wisdom. Now that's about the most unmodern thing he could say. But he'll say a hedonistic thing in 30 seconds. And it is so far, this abasement and mourning are so far from having any inconsistency with those consolations and joys which the gospel tenders unto us in believing, as that it is the only way to let those joys into the soul in a due manner. You see why he's hard to read? But in a nutshell, if you don't keep yourself in a self-abased, mourning frame, you won't be as happy as you should be. I learn a lot of my Christian hedonism from people that write like this. Which is why I never felt it was a frothy, simple, light, glib, frivolous thing to talk about joy. With regard to his immense learning and his tremendous insight, he said something that I think is so remarkable. He said, I make no pretense of searching into the bottom or depths of any part of this great mystery of godliness, God manifest in the flesh. They are altogether unsearchable unto the limit of the most enlightened minds in this life. What we shall farther comprehend of them in the other world, God only knows. Now, here's the amazing thing about that sentence to me. Owen was the kind of person, Edwards was another one, who had climbed so high up the steeps of wonder revealed in the Scriptures that he could pull his face up over the ridge to see the ridges. Most people are down here looking up at that first ridge, carping at intellectuals who try to understand it. The people who really know how low they are the ones who climb high enough in biblical revelation to see over the first ridge to the other ones that disappear into the clouds. These people down here who never got to the top of the first ridge, they might be a little impressed, but they haven't even begun to see what Owen saw when he climbed up over 16 volumes worth into God and said, I haven't even touched. I think he was a humble man, and I think his humility opened him to the greatest visions of God, and he believed 2 Corinthians 3:18, that we may be gradually transformed into the same glory by beholding glory. Number two, second means by which I think he went after holiness. He grew in knowledge of God by obeying what he already knew. He increased in life-transforming knowledge of Scripture by obeying what he already new. In other words, holiness was not only the goal of his life, it was the means of pursuing the goal of his life. A spiral. Here's what he wrote. The true notion of holy evangelical truths will not live, at least not flourish, where they are divided from a holy life. As we learn all to practice, I put little exclamation parts after that to say Sinclair Ferguson was right. Everything he wrote was practical. He meant it to change practice. That's what he just said here. As we learn all to practice, so we learn much by practice. That's a typical Puritan way of talking. Owen's not good at it. The other Puritans are a lot better than Owen at little sentences like that are just, they just shove into a sentence so much. We learn all to practice, so we learn much by practice. And herein alone we can come under the assurance that what we know and learn is indeed the truth. And hereby will they be led continually into farther degrees of knowledge. For the mind of man is capable of receiving continual supplies in the increase of light and knowledge if they are improved into their proper end in obedience unto God. But without this, the mind will be quickly stuffed with notions so that no streams can descend into it from the fountain of truth. So my second point is, I think Owen advanced continually in holiness because in all of his studies, he studied to obey. He never studied just to stock his mind with a new thought or defeat an argument. We'll see more of that in a minute. Number 3, Owen passionately pursued a personal communion with God. He passionately pursued personal communion with God. It is incredible to me that Owen was able to keep writing edifying, weighty books and pamphlets under the pressures of his life. And I think the key was his ongoing personal communion. One of his early biographers, Andrew Thompson, wrote this. It is interesting to find the ample evidence which his work on mortification affords that amid the din of theological controversy, the engrossing and perplexing activities of a high public station, and the chilling damps of a university, he was yet living near God. And like Jacob amid the stones of the wilderness, maintaining secret intercourse with the eternal and invisible. Packer comments, communion with God was a great thing to the Puritans. To evangelicals today, it is a small thing. The Puritans were concerned about communion with God in a way that we are not. The measure of our unconcern is the little that we say about it. When Christians meet, pastors meet, they talk to each other about their Christian work and Christian interests and their Christian acquaintances, the state of the churches, and the problems of theology, but rarely of their daily experience of God. You feel that? I feel it. That's mainly what I talk about with you guys and pastors' gatherings. It's not because of any one individual bad person in this room. It's because we breathe a non-God air. We breathe a make-it-happen air. What's interesting in this country and what's interesting to talk about is what you have made to happen, not who you know in heaven. And what you tasted of Him last night at 1 o'clock. I'm going to make you all uncomfortable.